When I was a kid, I remember the world's plastic problem seemed insurmountable. Plastic was talked about as both this miracle of science, but also as a slow-motion environmental apocalypse. It couldn't be broken down by natural processes. Recycling it was difficult and degraded its integrity. Burning it gave off a host of nasty chemicals, and it was already spread globally. This carries on today in discussions about microplastics and the negative ways those impact our health and the ecosystem. And many people still seem convinced we're destined to bury the earth in mountains of garbage, like plastic water bottles and empty jugs. But the fight against plastic pollution has been a long one, and here we have the latest in a long line of developments, one that could potentially be a massive game changer. In June 2025, researchers at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland made a surprising announcement. They were able to turn plastic waste into medicine. Yes, actual medicine. Now, you may be wondering, how the hell does that work? To answer that, first we need to understand the chemistry involved. See, one of the most common forms of plastic is called polyethylene terephthalate. Polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, which is used in everything from food containers to plastic bottles, buckets, detergent bottles, chairs, tables, playsets, synthetic carpets, and even clothes. More than 350 million tons of PET-based products are produced annually. And there are a lot of industrial benefits to using PET, including its high tensile strength, insulating properties, lightweight, shatter resistance, broad temperature range, and even its permeability to microwave radiation. Recycling PETs also uses less energy and resources than manufacturing new ones, which should be great, except the vast majority goes unrecycled. According to McKinsey & Company, between 2012 and 2022, in the United States alone, only 27% of PET bottles were collected for recycling, and of that, less than 18% were actually recycled, while the rest was sent to landfills. This comes out to around 755 tons of recycled PET annually, versus the 2.3 million tons that end up being dumped and forgotten about. So how can this be made into medicine? Well, you see, like all plastics, PET is made from derivatives of crude oil, particularly ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid. You know what else is made from petroleum and similar compounds? Paracetamol. Yeah, I was surprised too. In 1834, the compound aniline was first isolated from coal tar, with a more efficient process discovered by Antoine Béchamp in 1854. This process allowed it to be derived from nitrobenzene via reduction with iron and hydrochloric acid. At a time when most painkillers were derived from plants like opium, this made cheap pharmaceuticals much easier to produce. This also led to the discovery of new types of reactions that allowed for the manufacture of everything from aspirin to morphine to heroin. But as many of these painkillers were found to have severe negative health effects, more experimentation was done with these new reactions. The result of these chemical tests was acetaminophen, also known as paracetamol, which means that plastic, Tylenol, and gasoline all have a common origin. And that brings me to the experiment done by the University of Edinburgh's Wallace Lab, who were armed with a simple but elegant solution to the problem: E. coli. This is an incredibly common group of bacteria found in water, soil, food. You even have some in your gut right now. While a few can be dangerous, most types of E. coli are either harmless or only cause mild infections. Its ubiquity also makes it a very useful bacterium for lab research. In fact, it was in E. coli that the CRISPR-Cas9 method of genetic engineering was discovered. But more on that in another video. The university is a world researcher in engineering biology, and put their skills to use by modifying a strain of E. coli to break down PET into its base components, particularly the acid. This is where a process called Lawson rearrangement occurs, which converts the acid into a new biocompatible molecule. From here, modifications made to the E. coli come into play, with genes that code for enzymes able to catalyze reactions using these new molecules. The result being, what began as plastic was transformed into paracetamol. What's more, this process took place at room temperature, in water, and produced absolutely negligible CO2 emissions. The E. coli were also able to convert 90 to 92% of the starting PET into paracetamol within just 24 hours. Granted, this proportion equates to about a 1 liter bottle of plastic being converted into 9 standard tablets. But while that doesn't sound like a lot, this is a proof of concept. So what does this mean? Can we stop worrying about plastic? Well, not yet. This process is still in its very early stages, and while it works, it would need to be scaled up to industrial levels to be a viable means of curbing plastic pollution and meeting demand for paracetamol and its derivatives. However, Because it requires no extreme temperatures or pressures and produces a tiny fraction of the carbon footprint of typical petrochemical production, it's very promising. What's more, paracetamol is only one possible outcome. According to Stephen Wallace, the study's senior author and an expert in biotechnology, similar methods could be used to convert plastic waste into other medicines, specialty polymers, and even biodegradable agricultural chemicals. While there are still a few hurdles to clear, Wallace and his team are optimistic. By combining traditional chemistry and genetic engineering, the team hopes to open up a virtually limitless number of possibilities. Entire microbial factories could be built, devoted to housing millions of bacterial cultures to turn what seemed like an insurmountable problem into a whole new industry, one that turns yesterday's waste into the future's resources. So the next time you're faced with a problem that seems insurmountable, just remember, a water bottle you threw away last year could one day be turned into someone's life-saving medicine. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider giving it a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you'd like, you can also follow me on my other channel. I have plenty more good news to share in the future. I hope you have a great day, and until next time, remember, be kind to yourselves and others.